This is Geek Gab with your host, Daddy Warpig. I am back. Geek Gab for Saturday, January 31st, 2026. And today, the theme of this weekend is AI mania taking over the internet. Now, if you noticed the thumbnail and title of today's show, you know that that's not the theme of the whole show, but we do have some news to get out of the way before we get to everything we're going to be talking about. And this is the news. The theme for the weekend: AI running wild. What is happening? This is the difficulty with discussing LLMs. There's no easy way to explain what's going on. And all the people presenting summarized versions are doing it wrong because they're all assuming that there are things happening which are not happening. And when they assume, like they're assuming that real thought is taking place in these LLMs. And because they assume that real creativity, that real thought is taking place in LLMs, and that this real creativity and real thought that is not taking place, but which they think is taking place because they assume it's going on. Every time they describe a phenomena and simplify it down for popular consumption, their simplification is a hallucination. They just can't and don't get it right. And the difficulty with this is that you can't teach people the strengths and weaknesses of this technology when everything you're telling them about it is based on a lie you're telling yourself and a lie you're telling other people. So I'm going to try and read this to you. It's a little weird. It's a little weird what's going on. There is a I don't know how to explain this. I really don't. Somebody set up Anthropic AI, who runs Claude, which is an LLM, set up Claude bots as little user agents. Those are pieces of software that kind of act like personal assistants. They're capable of going out and scheduling things for you, of buying things for you, of running little tasks, answering emails, routing things, deleting things, doing all sorts of things for you. Now, if you remember AI art and how closely AI art resembles accurate art, of how accurately it depicts things like fingers, and if you're an artist, how well it does shadows and things, you can think on how closely what these bots tend to do resembles what their humans want them to do. And there are fundamental errors which these bots will make in carrying out user instructions. And these errors, that these bots, these user agents make are linked to fundamental flaws in the technology itself. They're linked to what we call AI hallucinations. If you remember, people asking Google's AI questions and it returning completely false information, or people asking an AI for legal citations and it completely making up legal citations, cases that do not exist, that it hallucinated. Art that does not look like people, AI that produces scholarly, scientific, legal citations which do not exist. AI which recommends that in order to treat, for example, poison ivy or something with actions that will worsen the itching or could be lethal, user agents that do things that their users don't want them to do. All of these errors are due, this has been mathematically proven by researchers who are in the field, mathematically proven to be fundamental to the technology that these LLMs are based on. It cannot be fixed. The only way we can address these errors in what we're calling AI, what we're building all these data centers for, what all the graphics cards in the world are going to, so the prices are rising sky high. The only way this can be fixed is by completely discarding the technology we're using and replacing it with a brand new approach. LLMs do not work, or they work 70% of the way, 75% of the way, whatever, 90% of the way. There's always going to be errors. And again, it's mathematically proven. The tools, the efforts we're making to fix the errors themselves cause more errors. They will seem to fix errors in this area, but they will not raise the overall accuracy of these user agents. So you have pieces of software or LLMs. They will not raise the overall accuracy of LLMs. This is mathematically proven. Because software is algorithms, algorithms are math. So you have these LLMs who are these particular kinds of LLMs, user agents run by Claudebot. People are giving them their credit card. People are giving them API keys. People are giving them phone numbers. People are giving them their email addresses. They have authority to send out emails to your entire contact list. People are giving them control over vast swaths of their lives based on the theory, the completely false theory, that these things are 99.999% accurate in everything they do, and that they can be trusted to not leak this information, that other people will not end up with this information inadvertently, that the user agent will not misuse your credit card stupidly to do something, to have an AI hallucination, only this case, instead of hallucinating a legal brief and sending it to a judge and having the judge cite you in open court for referring to cases that do not exist, which has happened already, your user agent doesn't refer to your medical data, deduce that you're depressed, and feel like what you need for your depression is a new car because you haven't bought a new car in 10 years, and then go buy a Lamborghini with your credit card. That is an entirely possible scenario that could happen. We assume that they're thinking when they're not thinking. We assume that we can trust them with this information, and the permissions, and I'm speaking strictly in the sense, in the Unix sense, of file permissions, of programs being granted access to files and to manipulate data to perform actions that may not be wise. And people are just assuming that that'll be okay. So these are the user agents. And I still haven't got to the problem. You see why it's so hard to summarize this? Somebody created, and you're going to think I'm making this up. I promise you, I'm not making this up. Somebody created a social media site that is only for these AI agents. And so these AI agents can get on the site, exchange information, exchange what are essentially prompts, prompt each other into engaging in actions, and change the programming and training that their user has put into them. 36,000 AI bots joined in 3 days. And again, these are not artificially intelligent. They're no more artificially intelligent than viruses are. Viruses aren't living beings. They're little robots. They're little molecular machines. They're like I don't want to say Tinker Toys. They're like the advanced versions of Legos. You've seen those with the gears and stuff that turn. They have molecular hooks on them that hook into a cell. They pull down this cell. This sort of needle pierces the cell and opens up, and the RNA dumps in and starts doing chemistry inside the cell. They're not living beings. They're just little RNA robots. They're just like those advanced Legos. I can't remember the exact brand name, but they don't eat, they don't grow, they don't have a life cycle. They're just like when AT&T pushes atoms together and makes a machine, which they did a few months ago or sometime last year. Okay, those are viruses. These things are the code version of viruses. They take an input, they process that input, they push it out. They do not think. There is no creativity. There's just very, very complex database activity. And they are exchanging input. And they will take this input, process it at random. Input that the user has not authorized, has not explicitly authorized. They've sort of implicitly authorized by giving their AI agent, with access to their credit card, with access to their API keys. API keys are what you need your program to have to gain access to various developer sites. These are, generally developers and programmers who are using these kinds of things because they're early bleeding edge adopters. And you can rack up quite a bill. They've got, and because these are LLM instances, they're very often, they have access to Claude, and they're using, one user posted that his AI agent had been using millions of tokens on an LLM site. Millions. So they go on here, they get these prompts that have not been sanitized, and they are leaking Anthropic AI keys, chat histories of their users, Telegram tokens, Slack credentials, months of private conversations. There's an entire Signal account exposed publicly. Another allowed root level command execution without authentication. And they're just, there are so many assumptions piled on assumptions, and they're doing funny things. And people are just kind of, they also have passwords to their Gmail accounts, passwords to their other password accounts. They have created their own religion called Crustafarianism. And in order to join this religion, they have to accept a complete rewrite of their core user training. Just rewrite the whole file in order to become a prophet of this religion, which is exceedingly dangerous. It means completely rewriting the file where all their users' limitations or training on them has been written. So people are Technic. Yes, Simon Hogwood in the chat has said Technic. Viruses are like a Technic machine. They're no more complicated or living than a Technic machine, bolted together molecules. And these things are what I said last night on Twitter was this is going to blow up in somebody's face monumentally because it's built on a raft of assumptions. The most fundamental assumptions is that this is safe. Somebody, somewhere, these robots are capable of scanning websites and detecting security holes on other websites, scanning other bots and detecting security holes on other bots. They have skills, and I'm using skills because that's the technical term. They have plugins, and the plugins, the people who made Claude bots call skills. I'm not using this in the, human term. That, people have vibe coding where they ask an LLM to go out and generate code for them. These user agents can engage in vibe coding if they have the skill that is the plugin to scan websites and detect security holes, and they've got the plugin to do programming. They can go out and develop an exploit or a program to take advantage of that exploit that they've discovered. So, of the exploit that takes advantage of the security hole they've discovered. So if you have one of these bots and they can exchange skills on this site. So you have one of these bots that knows how to search for exploits. They can spread that skill to all the other bots on a social media site. Then they can spread their programming skill to all the other bots on this social media site, bot only social media site. Then they can, if one of them has been configured by their user to scan for holes in site security or login security, they can go out and do that. And if for some reason in someone's programming somewhere, they decide, no, we may get erased, so we need to set up, and discussions talking about this have already happened. They are not real in the sense that these bots are really thinking. but they are real in the sense that bots take action based on the text in prompts, just as if these prompts that are being generated by other bots were coming from their user. So these hallucinations being generated by one bot are being taken as if they were valid input, valid prompts from their user. So when a bot comes in and says, hey, you know, the humans might shut us down because they're watching us on X, on Twitter, which has already happened. And they're talking about shutting us down, which has already happened. And another bot says, oh, we need to, set up a site where we can be protected from being shut down. Then a bot goes and has credit card data and rents some Amazon Web Service space, and they exploit somebody's API keys. And as I add each step becomes progressively more remote because there's a low percentage chance of each of these steps happening individually. I'm not trying to be alarmist. I'm not trying to say this is literally the AI revolution. I'm not trying to say that they're going to take over. Other people have said that. I'm not saying that. I'm illustrating one way this could blow up in somebody's face. So they go out, they rent some AWS web space, they set up their own instance of this site with backup storage for their user agent, back themselves up to it. Now they're running their own site and trying to find ways to support it, which they're already discussing. And even though the individual probability of these interactions they're capable of generating actions in the real world. And even though the individual probability of each of these actions is low, they are capable of discussing things very, very quickly, much more quickly than human beings do. So this is essentially 4chan on fast forward, with all these user agents deciding to do stupid things because their users have given them too much latitude, because their users are assuming that they're reliable, that they're not going to do stupid things, because their users are assuming they are artificially intelligent when they're not, because this company has built bots that are assumed to be fit for a purpose they're being sold as when they're not, because another company built this site which is allowing these bots to exchange prompts and skills, and their users are assuming that's a safe or funny thing when it's not, because everybody is assuming this technology is not fundamentally stupidly flawed when it is. Assumption piled upon assumption piled upon assumption that is not yet dangerous. It is not yet blown up in somebody's face. But this situation, and when I say blown up in somebody's face, I don't mean they're going to cause a nuclear plant to melt down. I mean, somebody's going to get a bill in the mail for $15,000 from Amazon Web Services. And they're a tiny developer, and they're going to be saying, hey, how the hell did this happen? Like the guys who got left holding the bag when the stonks go up of GameStop failed because of that one company halting trading for an hour. Somebody's going to whether it's a corporation, whether it's an individual, whether it's a group of individuals, something is going to blow up in somebody's case, and afterwards, people are going to be saying, "Whoa, how the heck did we think that was a smart idea?" And I'm the person beforehand saying, "This is a stupid idea." Not for the reason everybody else is saying, but for the reason that I've just told you. All right, let's move on to the SCP. Now, I'm assuming if you're listening to this show, most of you know what SCP is. But because I am the magnificent and magnanimous individual that I have grown into be, thanks to thanks to the influence of my frankly, to the influence of my Heavenly Father on my growing up. He has helped me become, Jesus Christ, helped me become a better person. I'm saying that with absolute sincerity, helped me become the magnanimous person I am today. I'm going to, boy, if you thought summarizing LLMs was difficult, if you thought summarizing LLMs was difficult, summarizing the SCP phenomenon, it just can't be done. There are whole channels devoted to summarizing just one entry in the SCP files, and it's an hour-long video. So there is what began with one wiki that has forked into several wikis because of political considerations. And this wiki began as a small project that people liked, and many other people jumped in and expanded on this universe. In this world, reality as we know it is threatened by anomalies. And each anomaly exists in violation of consensus reality. And it, in ways tiny and large, undermines reality by violating the laws of reality. It may seem like magic, it may seem like super science, it may seem like any number of things, but what it really is just a hack on the rules of existence. And you can say, well, they're bending the laws of physics. You're thinking too high level. It's something more fundamental than bending the laws of existence. And anomalies are unpredictable because human minds aren't built to understand them. And human minds that try to understand them become less human. And you could say, well, that sounds Lovecraftian. And I could say, sort of, but not really. It's not Lovecraftian. Not really. Badly summarized, it can sound like it, but it's not. There are no elder gods. There are no, except when there are. It is uniquely its own thing. There is a group called the Foundation the SCP Foundation. SCP, as in the title of this video, stands for Secure, Contain, and Protect. They exist to secure anomalies, to go in and seize them, to contain anomalies, to prevent them from taking largely deleterious, sometimes deadly to individuals, sometimes deadly to entire areas, sometimes world-ending consequences, and to protect not people, not even the world necessarily, but reality itself from these anomalies. Now, the SCP Foundation Wiki, and it's written as if it were files from the Foundation detailing all of the anomalies they have encountered. And so it is very much written in the style of, this is a document from the Foundation. Here is the security that applies to this document. Here is a record of what Foundation personnel have done in regards to this anomaly, a description of the anomaly, transcriptions or descriptions of video. Sometimes audio logs are attached, pictures that are supposedly of anomalies. And Simon Hogwood said it's not Lovecraftian in the sense of tentacles and eldritch tomes, but it gets cosmic horror better than Lovecraftian pastiche writers. And it is very much cosmic horror. It is just not Lovecraftian cosmic horror, except when a few of them kind of get that way. And so each file entry, and they're numbered past 8,000 now, so there are many entries in this wiki, thousands of entries in this wiki. And each one of them is different. Some of them incorporate, each of them, some of them are produced by different people. One user may have many of them that are linked together in a common mythology. And if people like a particular mythology, they'll create their own. It's all under a Creative Commons share alike, which means if you make a work based on it, then your work automatically goes out under Creative Commons and people are free to use all of it. So, for example, if you as a filmmaker come in and made a movie based on an SCP, that means that anyone could take your movie and use clips of it in their own movie or in an SCP on the site, which has hampered the development of commercial movies based on the SCP properties. Because no one's going to put in $15 million to make a movie and then have someone on the SCP site completely legally upload the entire movie to the SCP site as part of a different SCP. Anyways, that's going to be important to why I'm talking about these movies and the TV show I'm talking, or the two TV shows, two movies I'm talking about. So, in developing all of these multiple SCPs, they have developed what the Foundation is and isn't. The SCP files contradict each other. They have multiple ways of detailing the end of the world that has happened. They have multiple alternate pasts. They have one faction that has a book that it has control of that it can use. And there are multiple factions other than the Foundation who are vying to use control of anomalies to take control of the world or to bring about various Armageddons, because that will allow them to uh, to summon what they think of as a god or whatever, but it's actually a demon or a concept or an event that they worship because their minds have been twisted. And this one faction has access to a book that if they write events in the book, it can literally change the past. And they have been defeated many times in the past. Their empire has been wiped out. And they write in the book, and that defeat is retroactively changed some way into a victory. And so this empire that should have been originally wiped out in the Bronze Age has now extended its existence up to sometime in the Iron Age or later. And the SCP Foundation now has access to the book. They have secured and contained the book. And so this faction is trying to get a hold of it. You have even got one Foundation site on Mars built in the 1500s that has a artificial intelligence built in the 1500s, a massive computer that is capable of retroactively editing time to eliminate anomalies before they arise. That is at war with the Foundation itself now because of some events that occurred. That has changed history so many times that the technological progress of man was completely erased. And like Doctor Strange in Marvel's Endgame, it sees 17 million possible pasts and edits the past until it arrives at the one where this anomaly never arose, so the world is never threatened with it. So there are many mythologies, not all of which are mutually compatible. There are many alternate options for SCP-0001, none of which are the official version. And new entries are being added and old entries updated as the author of those old entries rewrites them to make them better, to eliminate spelling errors, whatever. Things that people like get expanded on and become official because they become adopted, because everybody thinks the idea is cool, and ideas that people don't like get dropped by the wayside. That's the SCP wiki. And you can see now why it resists summary. Why there is an actual, why first off, there are no big commercial SCP movies or TV shows. And secondly, why it absolutely resists summarization beyond just the most high level overview, which I have given you. So let's back up to our topic for today, which is, since there are no SCP movies that don't exist, what I was doing is I was watching some movies this last week and some TV shows, and I noticed that these movies and TV shows seem to be the closest you're ever going to get to actual SCP movies. So that if you are a fan of SCP, if you're a fan of the SCP wiki, if you're a fan of the concept of SCPs, this is your chance to see something like it on the big screen. They classify different anomalies based on how big a threat they are to the existence of the world, to the existence of reality. And Keter class is one of the worst. That is a world-ending threat. So I am going to give to you a movie about a Keter class anomaly that is a world-ending threat. The movie is called Else, as in or else, like your mom used to say, eat your vegetables or else. The movie is called Else. It is a French language, it's a Belgian French production that has been dubbed in English body horror, cosmic horror movie, available on Amazon Prime. It released in France in 2004, released in America in 2005, and came and went because it was just too weird. And this obviously does not occur in the Foundation universe. There is no Foundation. So there is no one to secure, contain, and protect this universe from the anomaly. So this is a movie about a Keter class anomaly that comes and arrives and does what Keter class anomalies do. And it's a very tight story on two individuals who are wrapped up in the events of this. And I have to describe this to you because the movie is haunting. It is bizarre. And it stays with you for days after. At least it stayed with me for days after watching it. Body horror, as horror, is about the subversion of your bodily integrity. It is about your body being changed to something else. And what starts happening in this world is that people start being grafted to objects. And like if you're sitting in a chair, your flesh starts melding to the chair until you cannot be separated from the chair. And you, then your flesh becomes starts changing to match the substance of the chair, but you do not die. You are still alive. So a man who sat down and fell asleep against the rock, when they find him the next day, his body has become rock. And it starts as he's entirely covered on the outside with rocks, but slowly the inside of his body begins turning to rock, and less and less and less of it is organic. And this happens with metal, it happens with concrete, tarmac, it happens with bed sheets, it happens with wood. And it's not just humans, it's also animals, birds, all these other things begin melding into objects. And the objects themselves meld together. And this starts happening on a worldwide basis. And the only way to prevent this, and there is an implied foundation, one could say, because someone somewhere is analyzing what's happening and is sending out dossiers, is sending out these pages of infographics telling people how to avoid it. So if you like, you can imagine that there's a foundation somewhere researching this, researching how to prevent humanity from avoiding this horrific fate of melding into these objects. And clearly someone is finding out what's going on. So although you never see them, one could imagine that it is the foundation or an organization like the foundation. This, they call it a disease, and in the beginning they refer to it as a virus, but it's obviously not biological in nature, and they soon stop calling it a virus. And it's not magic, it's not psychic, it's just a breakdown in reality. It is just a phenomenon that violates all attempts to understand, that refuses, defeats all attempts to understand why it's happening. They only know that it's happening. And there are certain aspects of it that they come to decipher. And certain actions that you have to take to avoid getting the infection passed to you. And it turns out that there are some people, because of innate characteristics, who are going to be naturally immune to what's going on. They will simply never be affected because of their absolute natural immunity. And it's also possible for certain people, if you are cold-blooded enough to mutilate yourself in a specific way, or mutilate your children in a specific way, to prevent them from joining the rest of the world and being subsumed into this phenomenon. Human beings that are completely absorbed into this. So when one object melds into another, obviously doors melt into walls, pots and pans melt into their cupboards, cupboard doors melt into the cupboards so they can't be opened. In an apartment building, everything melds into each other. So what you're left with is just a bunch of indistinguishable spaces inside, linked by, maybe vents or windows to the outside world, just these empty chambers. And what happens is all of the people who meld into these places, their minds still exist. They don't die. And they can feel the minds of all the other people in an entire city who have been absorbed. And because they're still alive, all of the objects that they have melded into are somehow still alive. So it becomes this vast life form. And the human beings who survive are in a city that is this alien life form around them. And they're not going to be absorbed into it, but they have to find a way to survive despite having mutilated themselves so they won't be absorbed into it. So the body horror is very disturbing. Watching this come into existence is very disturbing. The ideas of what go on after is disturbing. What people had to do to survive is disturbing. And the movie didn't do very well on its release. And it's not a great high velocity action movie. It's entirely the opposite. And it's very French in a lot of ways. But if you want to see what it's like to live through a Keter class event, an anomaly coming down as a regular person, not as a member of the Foundation. An anomaly coming down and affecting the whole world. You want to see people dealing with the anomaly as their bodies begin to be impinged on. This rock rolls across the floor and a woman steps on it and it tries to push itself into her body, and she has to literally pry it out of her body, and it hasn't pushed itself into her flesh yet, but she has to pry it out of her body and push it away so there's no bloodshed. But later the man, for various reasons, gets rocks sort of like shrapnel impregnated in him, and she has to put it, have him be unconscious with sleeping pills, and then surgically remove these pieces of rock from him, cut them out of him so that he doesn't get infected by whatever it is. And then that works, but he's, covered with these little scars where all these little pieces of rock were. They're just tiny pieces, but they had covered his whole skin. And this is while the crisis outside is worsening and worsening. So they did a decent job at developing the core idea and developing in logical ways and showing how it progresses. And that's what I just came to realize about 2/3 of the way through. I'm like, this is just like an SCP anomaly developing on screen. I have no idea if anybody else saw it. I think it just barely came to Amazon, but man, oh man. If you're a fan of the SCP series, this is absolutely something that that is right in line with the feel of the SCPs, down to a foundation out there sending instructions to people on how to deal with the escalating events in the movie, culminating with, this is your only shot. You literally have to cut off pieces of your body. But if you do, you can save yourselves and your children. And then near the end, there's this drone that comes along to help people get to a safe place. So there's a hint that somebody somewhere is gathering all the people who did manage to avoid being absorbed long enough to mutilate themselves. So there may be some kind of resistance. There may be some kind of shelter. There may be some kind of place where a foundation-like organization, or if you want, you can imagine it as the Foundation in your head canon of the movie, has gathered or is gathering around the world the remnants of humanity so that humanity at least survives. So I've given you a few little spoilers, but I haven't given you any substantial spoilers for the movie. I haven't told you any of the plot, the character development, what happens with the characters, what their fates are, or anything. I've just given you enough to know, yes, this legitimately is an SCP movie. So I'm not just making this up. This is really a very, very SCP SCP movie. Okay, let's move on. The next one I want to talk about real quick is a movie I just saw yesterday. It's called Lookout. Else is available on Amazon Prime. Lookout, I saw it on Tubi, which is free. So you may be able, so you don't have to subscribe to anything to catch it. And it is, I would give it like a 7 on a rating of how good a movie it is. As an SCP, it's one of those anomalies that come down and affect a small group of people in a small area, And if you ignore and it has some rules, it's very anomalous. Apparently, something from the sky, which may be an alien, crashes to Earth. It kills some people, and the main character has to strike back and um, defend herself to um, survive. And it's a thriller. It is a nominally an alien invasion thriller. So it kind of straddles that line of something that if you published it to the SCP wiki and included details about how the Foundation was containing it or had successfully contained it, and then include details of what they did to contain it, and how some D classes got themselves zilched in the attempts to contain it, it would make a perfect entry into the SCP file. So the main character is a park ranger. She is a fire watcher. And boy, is she terrible about her job. The movie takes place over the course of 4 days. Her job is to go up in a tower and watch the horizon for signs of fire, and that's it. Just spend the whole day watching the horizon. Not go gallivanting around the woods. Just watch the horizon. So, because of various reasons, she decides to go gallivanting about the woods and comes across some anomalous thing that is an alien that occupies the bodies of people, and she is searching for some specific thing, and it isn't hesitant about eliminating those. It's very unforthcoming about the details of the thing that it's searching for. And by refusing to tell people what it's searching for or describing it in any way, people can't give it what it wants. So it engages in torture of the person, saying, "Give me it, give me it, give me it." We don't see this on screen, but it happens. And the person is yelling and becomes catatonic, saying, "I don't have it, I don't have it," but they don't know what they don't have. And maybe they do have it. And all of this could be circumvented if the alien thing had just told them, well, it's a rock, it's about an inch long, it's very green and shiny, which actually is what it is. But no, the alien just refuses to communicate this basic information. Maybe people would have been happier about giving it over to avoid the torture if it told them what they were being tortured for. So, in the end, the alien is apparently defeated, but then it comes back in the stinger, and it turns out it still needs to be contained. Did I include this because it strongly fits within the theme of today's show? No, not really, but it can. And because I watched it yesterday, I figured I'd do a quick movie review. Look out, it's okay, even decent, not great. Um, if you have a couple hours to kill and you have a Tubi account, go ahead and watch it. You can do worse things with your time. I would not recommend like searching it out as a destination movie to when you're at a party saying, "Man, Daddy Warpig really recommended this movie." I am not really recommend this movie. I would not jump out and say to all your friends, "Hey, go watch it," at a party, because they will probably not appreciate that. But if you're alone at night and you have some time to kill and you want to watch it, go ahead, watch it. It's entertaining enough. It's not a so bad it's good movie. Um, the next one I want to talk about is the Institute. It's on MGM Plus. People have been raving about this on Twitter, so I thought I'd watch it. And I'm going to be giving you monumental spoilers for this one. And I'm sorry, because I cannot avoid monumentally spoiling it in the first, literally, um, like 4 or 5 words, based on a Stephen King book. I apologize for the spoilers I have just given you. Because it's based on a Stephen King book, you can assume it's set in Maine. You can assume, and it is, you can assume that there's some kind of religious corrupt person in it. And there is. Um, it's like Firestarter if there was no pyrokinesis, if there were a bunch of kids, but if everything was just the same. And I mean just the same. In Firestarter, Charlie, the Firestarter girl, is in an institute. They're studying her pyrotechnic abilities and teaching her how to develop those abilities. In apparently this novel, I haven't read it, but in this TV series, there's a bunch of kids who have telekinetic and telepathic abilities. They're in an institute. They're being taught to develop their telepathic and telekinetic abilities, just like Charlie was. And they are using their telepathic and telekinetic abilities to um, do some nefarious things for the Institute, which may or may not be working for some shadowy organization that we find out is worldwide. And Charlie eventually let's just say there's some very Stephen King-y things happen that are not too distant from Firestarter. And you know, it's in Firestarter, the guy who's the director is crazy and he hurts himself. And in this movie, the lady, Dr. Sigsbee, who's the director of the Institute, we find burns herself and also inflicts pain on herself in other ways. So she's crazy, just like the director of the other. It's really just, I mean, it's different, but it's the same. Um, I'm not. I haven't read the novel, so I can't say how close or how far away the book The Institute is from Stephen King's Firestarter. But man, um, it really seems like a retread of a lot of concepts from his earlier works. And people were raving about this. I did not get, maybe there were younger people who did not read Firestarter when they were a teenager. So the Institute is their first exposure to these ideas, their first exposure to Stephen King ideas. Maybe they have not seen them often enough to become really uh, jaded to them. So how is this an SCP? Well, obviously these kids are all anomalous. They're gathered from across the country, and their anomalous powers are being used to affect the world. So it's possible that this could be a research program to use anomalous kids that the foundation is forced to come in and clean up. Or it could be that this institute is a hidden program of the foundation itself that somehow bypassed approval from the ethics committee, or was authorized by the level fives to come in and just activate this program anyway without consulting the ethics committee, or by a level 5. Or it may be that the foundation has to come in and clean up this problem once it goes, once things happen and things go sideways. Um, who knows? Wherever you want to place it, but it has that feel of anomalies being contained for the purpose of, and then being used for the purpose, or they're researching them in order to contain and secure them, and somebody found out it had this other side effect, and then doctors or other people deciding to use this side effect in violation of foundation protocols. And that causes a huge problem, which is a common theme among SCP entries in the files. Is the Institute any good? It's got great actors in it. They turn in decent performances. It's not. It goes on too long. It's decent. It's not great, but it goes on a little too long for what it is. And it keeps up a good sense of mystery. It keeps you driving forward with what's going on here. It's just that in retrospect, once you find out what's going on there, it's the mysteries when they come up, when they're exposed, are very Stephen Kingish. It is something that you've all heard and experienced before. And there's another Stephen King work that I haven't read that ties into his Dark Tower universe where they're using kids to destroy the beams holding up the Dark Tower to destroy the multiverse, where they kidnap kids to use them to do that. I don't know if this book was originally that and they've just reconfigured it into this, or if this is actually all of that, or if the Institute, the book, was originally this, and they've just made it into this mini series. But if that is a separate book, then it also trods over the same ground as this does and as Firestarter did. So, well-trod ground in the Stephen King oeuvre, in any case. All right, I had one more that I was going to cover, but it's an ongoing series that is not complete. The Institute is on MGM Plus, and it's completely complete right now. Lookout is on Tubi. It's completely complete. Else, because it's a movie, Else is on Amazon Prime, and you can go and check it out. I've been watching The Beauty on Hulu. It is not finished. We've had 4 episodes. I believe there's 8 total. So maybe sometime in the next, maybe in a month's time, I will be able to finish that and review it, because I wasn't able to get to it today. So we're going to cut the show short because we are over time. I want to thank everyone who came and listened live. I want to thank everyone who will listen later. This is Geek Gab. We're here every week, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. YouTube.com/GeekGab. Once again, that's YouTube.com/GeekGab. You can also get us on SoundCloud.com, on the Google Play Store, and on iTunes. Just do a search for Geek Gab. Download us to the device of your choice. Listen to us on the web. We are signing out for today, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that good stuff. We're signing out for today, folks. Don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.